Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting application that I think has a lot of useful applications, not just for the future of hybrid work environments, but also for those of us who are neurodivergent and have to navigate even more complexity with this new future of work and just work and life in general. It's called Spatial Chat, and if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. So Spatial Chat is a really cool and interesting way of having a virtual avatar of yourself, kind of like being on a video call. You can see, you can hear the individual speaking and presenting, but this little avatar is in virtual space. And with that, you can do different things, show documents, interact with others, do collaborative work. Lots of really interesting things that we can do with this system. And we're going to take a look at how this can benefit those of us who are neurodivergent, as well as those who are working with hybrid work environments, where some people are in the office and others are calling in from home, and how this could actually improve the situation and adoption of hybrid work environments. So on Spatial Chat, I have a space, and I called it My Space because, you know. And what's cool about My Space is that it is located within a team. So you can have different teams, and inside of those teams you can have different spaces. So when I enter my space, it's going to ask me to approve it can use my camera or my microphone. And so I say, sure, let's do that. And then it drops me into this breakout room. Now these breakout rooms are really interesting because you have the ability to speak, and those people who are in proximity to you, as you can see when I click and hold on myself, who's in my proximity. If there was somebody else around here, the closer they are to me, the more audio volume they're going to get when I talk using my microphone, which is currently going. So if I actually mute myself, you can see, oh, I got a little smaller there, and a little ring around my person goes away. But if I was close to other people, I could listen to them. And so inside of this large breakout space, you could have several different groups of people all talking in their own conversations, not talking all over each other. So it actually is like gathering in a physical location. So you can have conversations and all be in this breakout space. It's literally like a breakout room, but unlike Microsoft Teams, where it's literally a nightmare anytime we have to handle it, it's a physical, quote unquote, physical space where you gather in groups. And because of the area of effect like this, like I could be over here in the corner with a group of people in this little chair area, and only the people who are over there in this corner are going to be able to hear me, and I'm only going to be able to hear them. So this is like the perfect idea for a breakout room, which is exactly what it is. And one other final cool note about the breakout rooms is that you can even use Miro and Google Sheets and other applications in this breakout space too, when you're working with individual groups of people. I could be talking with my group over here, looking at these windows for these applications, and somebody else can be in another location in this breakout room doing the same thing with their own people. Really awesome. Now moving beyond the breakout room, there are two other kinds of rooms that you'll have in your space. The first one I'm going to show you is the stage. Now the stage is kind of like what you would expect. It is a presentation stage. Now, I just joined this place, so it's kind of like when you join a Discord chat. There's just, or a voice channel. There's nothing in there. But what we can do is, right down here at the bottom, there's become a speaker. And so I'm going to do that, and it's going to say, okay, microphone and the camera, good to go, go on stage. And now I am actually presenting. So this way, you can actually see me give a presentation, like a video call, but now I can also do everything else you might expect me to be able to do. Share a screen, show an app, we can chat, there's emoji reactions, all the good stuff. So now you can have your presentations, you can have town hall meetings, you can have coaching, you can have trainings, and then afterwards, when you're having a break or something, go to the breakout room, interact with each other in that capacity. Now we're going to move on to the third and final space. So you've been able to have breakouts after a presentation, and maybe you're inspired after all of that to go and actually do some collaborative work with somebody else in your team. So what we can do then is transition to the workplace room. Now, if I click on the Workplace room, it's going to take me to this large open canvas, and there's going to be a unlimited sandbox to place applications, interact with different apps, and work collaboratively with other people, and talk about certain things, and perform collaborative work. And we're going to get more into these rooms later on, but this is just a taste of how much this application and service can do when it comes to co-working and networking, talking to other people in a digital space, a shared digital space that broaches that difference between work from home and work in the office. So how does this application apply to those who are neurodivergent? How does this really help us, and what value does it provide? Well, in looking at it from the perspective of somebody who does have a neurodivergence, you can use it for the purpose of, say, body doubling. Now, if you haven't heard of the term body doubling, I think I first heard about it on Jessica's How to ADHD channel. And how you do body doubling is you have a bunch of people, or even just two people, on like a video call or in some sort of chat room. You can, and it does help, to be visible on camera so you can see other people and feel their presence as like a peer, but you just do your own things. It's saying, let's do separate things together, because alone I likely would not have the motivation, the willpower, or my attention would just wander. But having somebody sitting there watching you, not really watching you, but in your presence and you're in their presence, helps you get things done. At least for those who have ADHD, it's a very, very common tactic of just doing something with somebody else helps. In which case, be like, hey, come over to my house and just sit on my couch and talk to me about your day. But I'm going to be like cleaning and doing chores and things, because having somebody there who's like around you helps. Along with the benefit of work from home in general, of you have all of your comfort items, blankets, your stuffed animals, if it's applicable to you, comfy clothes, you don't have to be on camera, and your pets, your kitchen, you can cook whatever you want whenever you want it. Having all of the safe place, safe comfort items, animals, things that help make you comfortable and not overstimulated and not overly stressed out is, of course, a huge, massive benefit for those who work from home. And using spatial chat to, scratch the itch of those who need to be around people and engage with people in a more like face-to-face and social way is potentially a good middle ground for those who actually really prefer work from home, even just from a perspective of I'm more productive and effective that way, but also for those who want to continue to maintain a lack of overstimulation and just a better quality of life. It's an excellent middle ground to serve for both purposes. Some of the things I really appreciate about the application are that it allows you to do text-based communication if you choose to. So for instance, if I don't feel like speaking and I'm not feeling very verbal at that moment, I don't have to use my microphone. What I could do is I could just type out my answers, kind of like how I do in Microsoft Teams sometimes when I'm at work, is instead of barging in and talking over somebody, which is my biggest pet peeve, is that I will just type my messages into the chat, because I don't like to interrupt the conversation, but at the same time I need to get the thought out of my head, otherwise I'll lose it, or I won't be paying attention to the actual conversation because I'll be trying to remember what I wanted to say. And so allowing for that text-based communication is very useful, and you have a little chat bubble that pops up, but you also have the chat history, so in case you miss it. Chat, typing, using chat to communicate is a very valuable added thing that just adds another layer of accessibility to the application, but also the emoji reactions. One thing I love about remote work is I got a lot of other people in my workplace using emojis either in communication in text or just the emoji reactions to things, because for at least for me and others, I know it's a thing where it's very hard to read tone, and then you can misconstrue the tone, and then that can mess with your emotional dysregulation. And so just having some emojis that hey, can we chat for a minute? Instead of it just being period and a terse sentence at the end that kind of raises your anxiety, it's hey, can we chat for a minute? No period, smiley emoji, it's a little bit more evocative of your emotional state and less intimidating and anxiety inducing. But what I also love about Spatial Chat, more than like say Microsoft Teams, is that the emoji reactions are better, i.e. they're not the Skype ones that Teams has, and these ones you just get more options and they're just better. So really enjoy that as well. Not to mention, I also really just love emoji reactions a lot of the time, because sometimes if I don't really have the effort or don't feel like it, I'm not a very emotive person. Like, I obviously do it for YouTube and cameras, but like, this is my normal face if I'm not being very emotive. So instead, doing emojis is a much nicer way of expressing how I'm feeling when my external face doesn't match what I'm actually feeling, and helps me save that energy for things like actually doing my job and my work, which is kind of important. As somebody who works in IT, who does DevOps and has daily stand-up meetings, this is a really cool way of potentially doing a daily stand-up where you could have an embedded web browser or application showing like your Scrum Kanban board, and actually talk about the work items, and everyone's sitting in a meeting room almost as if you were doing this physically in the office and actually doing productive work. You could do pair programming. You could have a shared window of VS Code, because VS Code is potentially accessible in the browser, which you can do with any GitHub repo by pressing the period key when you have a repo open, is you can open that in VS Code. And so we could do pair programming, we could do diagramming with Miro, which I will show you in a bit, which is really cool because we use a lot of Miro where I work, and I even use it for like mapping out my own personal stuff. So there's a lot of functionality that enables you to do collaborative work while in this shared digital space. Not quite as off the rails as something like Meta is with the metaverse and all of that, and for VR headsets, we're not there yet. So this is actually a really great middle ground for doing some of this collaborative work in a virtual space without being a little alienating by how weird VR is in the current day. Okay, so there are three main space types in Spatial Chat. So if we take a look at this, we have three different types over here. There's Spatial, Stage, and Workplace. Now, I'm going to talk more about Workplace, but Spatial is what I've already shown you, where you could have your avatar around here, you can have them display, you can have these meetings, you can display things, talk about things, and it's really good for communication, either between two individuals, like having a one-on-one with your manager or something, and you can have private rooms where it's just the two of you having this kind of discussion and showing different things, or a whole team. Then there's Stage. Stage is really useful because you have these breakout rooms where you can show things and discuss with other people and have the proximity voice going on, so you can have different groups of people doing collaborative work in their own little areas, all within the same digital space. But let's say you're going to have like a town hall meeting or a very large stand-up, or just stand-up in general. That's the perfect type of place for Stage, which is the place for staging a presentation, or you can like record audio for a podcast or something. But I could become a speaker, show my camera and microphone. Now I'm here, and while I'm in Stage, I'm able to show my screen. I'm not going to do that right now because having the ultra-wide monitor makes this a pain, but I can show, I can actually embed Miro. I can also show a PowerPoint. If I did share my screen, I could show different windows, so I could do like a actual PowerPoint presentation or something else. So those are the types of things that we can do with staging rooms. And you can also have those emoji reactions. Somebody liked my presentation. We can have chat, and using chat in something that we do a lot in my actual workplace, because not often do people want to actually just butt in with the audio and start talking over other people. So we really heavily rely on chat just to get the ideas out, as well as so we don't interrupt people. Great talk. And you can actually interact with the chat room and do it directly. So just like, you might do in Zoom. And even embedding iframes, which if you know from my other Obsidian videos, or my Obsidian videos, iframes are everywhere. You can embed anything because of iframes. So you got Trello, you got YouTube videos, you got other websites. You can embed all kinds of crazy stuff with iframes. So even though the Miro is the only standard option right here, you could share your screen or an app, or just embed an iframe itself. So you could actually share like a YouTube video or something and have everyone watch it. Lots of potentials to use with the stage rooms. So after we're done giving our presentation and we want to go either to the breakout room or continue with some more collaborative work with somebody else on our team, we can do that in the next type of space, which is workplace. So the workplace space or room, I keep saying spaces instead of rooms, they are rooms. The whole thing is the space. So inside workplace, we can do a lot of really interesting stuff that's kind of cool. And one thing I like about this is that you see these two little squares here. I've already opened up some applications. And because this is like a free-form space, you can put these applications and things in here. Or what I really like for those of us who have the predilection for it is I like to spread things out. I want to look at everything all at once, get a bird's eye view of the work that I'm doing, and sometimes just having it all spread out helps me put these pieces together and get a very good grasp on the current state of a very large project or task. And so what you can do in Spatial Chat is I can have all these different applications, files, images, windows, everything's open, but when I'm ready, I can zoom in onto something and display different applications or iframes. I have a video about iframes and those applications that you can display with iframes, but you can embed straight up web browsers and go to different sites and do things collaboratively in the workspace. And like you saw, I just came back into this workspace. These things you can pin so you can come back to a workspace or a project the way that you left it if you leave work for the day and come back. And so like I was already using Miro to diagram like my personal finances database architecture, and like I can just access this inside of Spatial Chat. This, instead of going to Miro, going to VS Code, going to all these different sites and services, I can have them all in Spatial Chat, open up these different windows, navigate between them while all still staying in this collaborative environment that allows for better communication and facilitation of information exchange between individuals on a team or just people. And so I could work inside of Miro and just double click on this to get control over the browser. I could zoom in, do stuff, do everything I normally do in Miro as if it's just a browser within a browser, which it is. And there you go. When I'm ready, I can just click out and I can move around. I can zoom back out, go to this one, and hey, here's VS Code. This means you can actually do collaborative coding with another team member. I mean, there is the VS Code live share, but in my experience with another coworker where we actually tried to do collaborative coding, it was not very intuitive and friendly. But if you can do this like in the browser instead of doing this like live share session, especially with VPNs, which was really bleh, this is really cool because now we could just access the same browser session or do something all in the cloud by default and access it from this shared location. And we're both interacting with this browser window. So we could both type and deal with code in this browser window at the same time. It's a potential very strong use case for doing this for developers and those of us who work in IT with code. Really cool. And you want to display documents about what we're doing, have it all laid out here, have your Miro diagram going. It's all possible. And I think that's just a really cool feature. Pin those things, come back to the project when you're done, have multiple workspaces for different projects. It's just a whole crazy new way of doing work. Because things like Microsoft Teams, yeah, you could have apps within the channels, but figuring out where all that stuff is going and how it's all interacting, it's kind of a mess, especially with SharePoint and the backend. I don't prefer it. This is a really cool, simple way of doing really awesome collaborative work in a place that facilitates such better communication. Another cool thing you can do in spaces and when you're with other people is actually highlighting something. In a way, you can actually draw for emphasis, kind of like having a laser pointer. So if I change, I'm going to change that to red, and I'm going to click this little pencil icon, and now I can actually do something with this pen and highlight something, especially if you're going to give like feedback if you're doing like a code review or something. This is really cool because like a laser pointer, I could draw emphasis to this particular item or issue. Like you didn't say main, you said man for this dunder method. And so I could actually draw around that and say, hey, there's where your issue is. But this doesn't actually affect anything in the space. It fades very quickly, and it's a way of quickly drawing attention as well as showing a more visual example of pinpoint your attention to here, which I would find a lot of use for. And what this could also double with, if you haven't thought about this, is if you had like a little tiny tablet on your desk next to your mouse, you could use that to actually do drawing or even diagramming with a stylus instead of a mouse. So there's a lot of really cool applications for a lot of these tools, not just for presentations, but for collaborative work. Another strong facet of spatial chat that makes it a little bit more viable for actual like enterprise workplace adoption, as well as for those who are a little bit more privacy conscious, are that it has several awesome security options. Just as, a user-facing easy one is that you have private spaces where guests are unable to join. You could also actually add passwords to your specific spaces, such as a confidential HR-related project that only specific HR staff need to be involved in because it has protected information. Perfect place for a secured space. But there's also the more like technical compliance and security facets where you have SOC2, Type 2. You also have compliance with GDPR, so your data retention and what you actually collect on users is actually regulated and transparent. But there's also SAML single sign-on for those enterprise applications where you just want to have SSO for the entire organization using SAML. So these are some very, very appealing options for the security and information retention compliance for this application as it applies to the privacy conscious as well as the enterprise organizations and services. And just like working collaboratively on applications with a team member in a workspace, these workspaces could host any number of applications in your application stack. For instance, you could put Notion in here, Figma, Trello, Jira, Monday.com. All these different pieces of your workflow could even be organized in a linear layout so that you could first do that whole management step and then it flows into the data, it flows into the next application. And all of this can be configured and used within this whole environment, Spatial Chat. This is a very strong use case for people with a lot of applications in their environment, but also need to manage where data is flowing and keep track of a very complex workflow. You have the workflow documented, a rare occurrence in my experience. That document could be displayed within the same workspace along with all the windows to the applications that are involved. And this could also be just for a particular workflow or project. So the application of this for workflows that deal with multiple applications and processes and process flows, really incredible, because you could set up an entire workflow in a single workspace and every single one of your workflows could have its own workspace. You just log into it, here's everything laid out, prepared and ready for you, along with a document that describes what you need to do if you need to refer back to it. That would be incredibly helpful for somebody like me who needs it all laid out, explicitly defined, and can actually see how things flow. Even just for people who aren't neurodivergent, this would probably be helpful. But for me, I could say that would be an incredibly valuable resource for the work that I need to do and how I actually approach work. Really awesome. Something else that I'm not sure how many people have thought of that a great application of this is for people like me, again, who have ultrawide monitors. I have a new ultrawide monitor that is basically like two of my old monitors combined into one, which actually makes screen sharing a little bit more of a headache than you'd think, because I can't specifically designate half my screen for a normal resolution to share, because maybe I don't want to share just one application. I need to jump back and forth between a bunch of different things. So I find that just sharing that half of the screen is easier to just drag stuff onto there and use my hotkeys to move windows around. This is actually a problem for a lot of things, especially on my work machine, which is Windows. It's a big pain, especially you can't just download custom software to handle this issue. So instead, what I can do in Spatial Chat is kind of something that you can do in Microsoft Teams, where you share a particular application. But the problem is in Teams, you have to, share it. Okay, I want to switch to another one. Okay, stop sharing, share a different one, scroll, find it. What I like about Spatial Chat that is so much better, more intuitive, and just a better experience overall than that, is that I can actually share multiple things. So I'm going to say, I'm going to share the one window I care about, and I'm going to put that over here, and then I'm going to share another one that I care about, which I'm going to put over here. So these are two different browser tabs that I have on my actual machine, but I can share it like I'm sharing two different screens at once, and I can actually display multiple things at once. But what I like is that, yeah, I can't jump from one application to another, but what I actually care about is that I don't have to constantly fiddle with settings. I could have everything displayed all at once from all the sources that I'm going to be showing in this meeting, if I'm having a meeting, and just draw attention over to the specific one that I'm actually paying attention to. That is incredibly helpful for those with ultrawide monitors that are absolutely sick and tired of jumping around and sharing a particular single page every time you need to switch between one. It is a very helpful solution to the very prominent pain point I have working from home with an ultrawide monitor and not being able to install software to help with screen resolution and sharing. Great application of this feature. One other thing I will say about how useful this application is for bridging gaps in different communication styles and communication preferences is, again, the people who always whinge about, if you don't go to the office, you're not going to have all that water cooler talk, and you're not going to have those spontaneous conversations. And I have never seen a water cooler in any office I've worked in the past 7+ years. But that aside, having this virtual space that allows you to be on display and in a shared space allowing for just random conversations like that is a very valuable thing to provide to both satisfy those who feel like they need that social contact with their peers, but also allowing those who really do not want that, which is usually me, because I can't focus long enough. And the minute that somebody comes and knocks on my cubicle wall, hey, how was your weekend? Like, I was in the middle of focusing on a very large abstraction in code, and now it's all gone. My weekend was great. Thank you. It was nice. Oh, cool. Mine too. Yeah, nice to see you. This is a great middle ground for the differences in communication styles. It's very useful. And overall, what also makes it appealing for many people is that it's also not very expensive. There is a free tier. The regular plan is $6, and look how much you get. Up to 10,000 users, 10 spaces, private spaces, and 5 meeting recordings, just with $6 a month. That's very inexpensive, and honestly, I was very surprised at that price point for a product like this. So don't sleep on it. Check it out. It might actually be something very value added for you, and maybe even your own private community. Like, you want to set up just a couple friends studying and doing body doubling or something and actually study together, show your documents. This is great for those private use cases as well as enterprise organizations. So I hope you found this video interesting. Spatial Chat is a very interesting approach to the hybrid work environment and just communication technology today. I was really intrigued when I first opened up the application and looked at it, and maybe you might be as well. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Thanks again to Spatial Chat for sponsoring this video, and I will catch you all in the next one.